Two of the most valuable companies in America just confirmed they are building a single factory so large, its owner calls it the largest and most valuable building on Earth. $16.8 billion for the first phase alone, more than 100 million square feet of floor space, roughly 10 times the size of the enormous car plant it sits near. And the entire purpose of this thing is to make computer chips. Chips for humanoid robots, for self-driving taxis, and for data centers that would one day float in orbit around the planet. It is one of the clearest signs yet that the race to power artificial intelligence has turned into a race to pour concrete. This is KnowFlo Daily. It's Friday, August 7th. 4 quick ones before we get to the day's biggest story. The Federal Communications Commission voted 2-1 on Thursday to scrap a rule that stopped any single television station owner from reaching more than 39% of American households. That cap had been on the books since 2004. Now the agency will review big station mergers one at a time. Chairman Brendan Carr says it will help local broadcasters survive an era of collapsing local news. The one Democratic commissioner called the move illegal, arguing only Congress can lift the cap. The immediate winner is Nexstar, a station giant already sitting near that old line, whose pending deal for arrival would push it to about 80% of US TV households. Amazon's robotaxi company, Zoox, will start charging for driverless rides in Las Vegas on August 10th. That ends more than a year of free rides that have carried close to 1 million passengers across Las Vegas and San Francisco. Federal regulators just gave it the green light with an exemption from rules requiring human controls, which matters because these vehicles have no steering wheel, no brake pedals, and no mirrors. They are toaster-shaped shuttles with seats facing each other and wheels that drive in both directions, unlike rivals such as Waymo and Tesla that retrofit ordinary cars. Fares will be based on distance and time, priced to match the pricier comfort tier of a normal ride-hail app, and the company says it has already covered more than 3 million miles on public roads. A New Mexico judge ordered Meta on Thursday to pay $567 million into a fund meant to reduce the harm its platforms do to kids. That is on top of $375 million a jury told the company to pay back in March. The judge found that Facebook and Instagram amount to a public nuisance and are a significant driver of the youth mental health crisis in the state. Most of the money, $420 million, goes toward treatment over the next 5 years, and the judge ordered new limits on how much time teens spend on the apps. Meta says it disagrees and will appeal. The case began in 2023 after the state's attorney general ran an undercover operation using a fake profile of a 13-year-old girl. Some experts are calling this social media's big tobacco moment. And WK Kellogg says it will strip artificial colors out of its entire cereal lineup by the end of this year, a full year ahead of schedule. That means new recipes for Fruit Loops and Apple Jacks, switching to colors from fruit and vegetable juices instead of synthetic dyes. The company is also dropping an artificial preservative called BHT from the few cereals that still use it. It follows years of pressure, including a petition with 400,000 signatures, and it brings the US products closer to the versions Kellogg already sells in places like Canada. But the biggest story today is that factory from the top of the show, because the numbers behind it are almost hard to picture. Let's get into it. Tesla and SpaceX confirmed on Thursday that they will build a giant chip-making complex called TerraFab in Grimes County, Texas, about 100 miles from Tesla's Austin headquarters. The first phase alone is a $16.8 billion investment. Elon Musk, who runs both companies, called it the largest and most valuable building on Earth, by far. The scale really is the story. The complex will cover more than 100 million square feet of manufacturing space, about 10 times the size of Tesla's existing gigafactory in Texas. Under one roof, it will handle chip design, wafer fabrication, memory production, packaging, and testing. And Tesla says it is built to churn out more than 1 terawatt of AI computing power every single year. So what are all those chips actually for? 3 things. Tesla's Optimus humanoid robots, its self-driving cybercabs, and, strangest of all, SpaceX's plan to put data centers in space. SpaceX calls satellites the only truly scalable way to run AI in the future, because up in orbit, you get abundant solar energy and fewer limits on land, cooling, and regulation than you face building data centers on the ground, and the money could get enormous. The confirmed first phase is $16.8 billion, but SpaceX filings from May outlined an initial investment of up to $55 billion, with the total potentially reaching $119 billion if the later phases go ahead. The state of Texas is chipping in a $30 million grant, and Intel has said it will contribute, though exactly how is not yet clear. For now, the project promises at least 3,000 jobs, and the companies say they will draw water from a nearby reservoir rather than local groundwater, which is usually the first thing neighbors worry about with a plant this size. Step back, and this is the physical shape of the AI boom. Not an app, not a chatbot, but a building the size of a small city, designed to manufacture the raw computing power that every one of these companies is now scrambling to own. That hunger for computing power is rippling straight down the supply chain, so let's get into the main stories. Start in South Korea, where where SK Hynix said on Friday it will spend $38 billion to build 2 new memory chip plants. One, in Yongin, will make the high-bandwidth memory that AI systems devour. The other, in Cheongju, will make NAND flash storage. The company is racing a shortage because memory prices have shot up as everyone building AI infrastructure buys all the chips they can get their hands on. The timing is telling. Ground breaks on both plants in 2027, with the first clean rooms opening in 2028 and 2029. The Yongin site is the second of 4 factories the company has planned for a single sprawling chip cluster, part of a much larger plan it laid out last year to pour hundreds of trillions of Korean won into these facilities. And one research firm expects demand for both kinds of memory to keep growing about 19% a year through 2030. That same memory crunch, by the way, is a big reason new smartphones are getting more expensive this year. Next, a step forward for one of the biggest media mergers in history. The UK government approved Paramount Skydance's takeover of Warner Bros. Discovery on Thursday after regulators decided the deal does not threaten competition. Sources put the value of the whole merger anywhere from $81 billion to $111 billion, depending on who you ask. To win approval, Paramount made legally binding promises to protect editorial independence and keep news brands separate. It agreed to invest £80 million in the UK and keep Channel 5 walled off from its American news outlets, CBS and CNN. The approval follows a green light from the European Union last month, which cleared the deal only after Paramount agreed to exit a joint venture with Universal Pictures in the region. But the deal is far from done. In the United States, 12 state attorneys general and the Writers Guild are trying to block it, and Paramount has agreed to pause and head to trial next March. Until it closes, Paramount owes Warner shareholders about $7 million for every day past September 30th. Here's one that ties a lot of today together. A defense manufacturing startup called Hadrian just raised $1.37 billion at a valuation of nearly $8 billion. That is more than 4 times what the company was worth back in January. Hadrian builds advanced factories for defense and aerospace companies, and it sells precision parts and even whole factories as a service, using skilled workers backed up by AI, automation, and robotics. This round comes just over a year after it raised $260 million, and the company now runs nearly 3 million square feet of factory space across 4 sites. Why the frenzy of investor interest? The US is trying to rebuild its ability to make weapons at home. Back in March, the Navy said Hadrian would mass-produce parts in Alabama for its attack and ballistic missile submarines, and the company already works with big arms makers like Lockheed Martin and RTX. The chief executive put it bluntly, saying that having advanced factories is itself a form of deterrence. It is the same anxiety driving a lot of headlines right now, the worry that America is firing missiles faster than it can build them. Finally, a development that could matter for what you pay at the gas pump. Iran says it has reached a deal with Oman on a navigable channel through the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow waterway that carried about a quarter of the world's seaborne oil last year. Under the plan, ships coming in would use Iranian waters, and ships heading out would use Omani waters. Iran's foreign ministry says the arrangement is in its final stages. There are big catches. Iran says the route would be temporary, maybe 2 to 4 months, and that it guarantees nothing while the US keeps up a naval blockade of Iranian ports. At the same time, Iran's parliament is weighing a bill that would block ships from the US, Israel, and other countries it considers hostile from using the strait at all, with violators facing fines of up to 20% of a ship's cargo value. President Trump said this week that a lot of progress has been made and a deal could come within days. Markets are paying attention. Oil prices ticked up on Friday, with Brent crude gaining more than 1%. All right, lightning round. Quick hits before we let you go. President Trump signed 2 executive orders on Thursday aimed at limiting who qualifies for birthright citizenship and cracking down on so-called birth tourism. It comes weeks after the Supreme Court rejected his earlier effort in a 6-3 ruling. The orders would deny visas to people traveling to the country specifically to give birth and expand the categories of people the administration considers ineligible. Legal challenges are expected almost immediately, with critics pointing to the 14th Amendment. A leadership change at one of America's biggest oil companies. ConocoPhillips says Chief Executive Ryan Lance will retire on September 1st after 14 years in the job, handing the reins to Finance Chief Andy O'Brien. It comes as the company reported second quarter profit of nearly $4 billion, more than double a year earlier, driven mostly by higher oil prices. 1 week after a rare joint effort by the US and Japan to prop up the Japanese yen, that rally is already fading. The currency jumped after the July 31st intervention, but it has since given back nearly half of those gains. Washington's worry is that a weak yen could stoke inflation in Japan and rattle other Asian currencies. The Treasury Secretary admitted that intervention alone cannot decide where the currency goes. An eye care company called Tarsus Pharmaceuticals is buying a smaller firm, Alkeus, in a deal worth up to $800 million. The prize is an experimental once-a-day pill for Stargardt disease, an inherited condition that slowly destroys central vision and often starts in childhood. More than 36,000 Americans have been diagnosed with it, and right now there is no approved treatment for it in the United States. Forbes released its first ever ranking of historically black colleges and universities, with separate lists for private and public schools. Howard University topped the private list, and North Carolina A&T State led the public one. The rankings looked at graduation rates, what students earn after college, and student debt. It lands at a tricky moment for Howard, which recently disenrolled more than 500 students over unpaid balances before reinstating a couple hundred of them. The academy that hands out the Oscars named 16 winners of its Student Academy Awards, chosen from nearly 3,000 entries by student filmmakers around the world. Schools from outside the United States took 9 of the 12 awards, sweeping every prize in both the animation and narrative categories, the most ever for international schools. All of the winning films are now eligible to compete for a short film Oscar, and past winners have gone on to collect 70 Academy Award nominations. And finally, one of the stranger home runs you will see. In Atlanta on Thursday night, Ronald Acuna Jr. hit a fly ball to left center, and the Marlins' 2 outfielders ran straight into each other on the warning track. The ball bounced off their gloves and over the wall for a 2-run homer. The Braves rolled to an 11-3 win, their 8th in a row, and Acuna added a second, much more ordinary home run later, just to be safe. That's the day. 2 companies building the biggest factory on the planet to make AI chips, a Korean giant spending $38 billion on memory to keep up, a defense startup worth $8 billion almost overnight, and a media megamerger clearing one more hurdle. The through line is hard to miss. The race to build artificial intelligence has become a very physical and very expensive scramble for chips, factories, and machines. That was KnowFlo Daily. Sign up for your personalized newsletter at knowflo.io. News picked for you, your local news included, free.